Well, surprise, surprise, another defeat at home, but we might have got a little bit of an answer to his story, so we'll talk about that next on the Upload Rant Week 15 edition, Titans and Bengals. Shout out to our sponsors of today's video, BetUS. We'll talk more about them a little bit later. So, Titans fall 37-27 to the Cincinnati Bengals, who this was a bad game. I think even if you're a Bengals fan, this wasn't a very well put together game, okay? Now, we talked about it during the watch party and before the game started. Like, the Bengals defense is pretty atrocious. They're not as bad as Jacksonville, but they're not much better than that. And that what really kind of set me apart when I'm seeing there in the middle of the third quarter and seeing the quarterback with 80-some yards. Was that on the quarterback? Is that on the coach? Well, the announcers put it on the quarterback. And I think most of us, if we're being honest with ourselves, have to put it on the quarterback too. Quarterback was lousy. Quarterback was terrible. You could come at me with all sorts of darts, offensive line, receivers, and all yada, 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 coaching. That's fine, but really only gave up one sack during the day. They gave you some time to throw, and these guys weren't open. I don't know what he's looking at. And that's what the announcers were trying to say multiple times. Like, what was he looking at? So he eventually gets benched in the third quarter. Now, Mason Rudolph comes back out, and he throws the ball over a guy's head and gets it picked off. We're like, oh my gosh. But at least Mason Rudolph put up over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a quarterback rating over 100. And the difference is that Mason Rudolph got a quarter and a half. Yes, that's right, a quarter and a half. This isn't me pounding the table for Mason Rudolph, but this is for me to like open up like, hey, it took 15 games. I'll give you 15 whatever weeks in the NFL. Bottom line is I don't know how you could give any more excuses to have the quarterback come back next year and Will Levis and be the starting quarterback and run it back in 2015 again, even if you have no other choice. Because what's going on right now is a disaster. It's going to get the GM fired. It's going to get the coach fired. And maybe it should. It's not just a situation where we blame Will Levis. And I totally understand the people that are out and discounted on Levis. I've been out on him for a while. But the direction of this team is a hot mess. This is another prime example of another hot mess of a game. They score 14 points. They're up 14-7 in the first quarter. And then it's just like, oh, here we go again. It's one thing after the next. It's here, this thing, that thing. By the way, Worley gets an interception. Shout out to him. But can we get a coach that's willing to pull guys out and honestly ask them to maybe make themselves safer? But I mean, you teach JV football to tackle with your head up. He torpedoes himself with his head down on every play other than the interception. And I'm getting tired of seeing it. And I get it. But that goes back to my whole thing. This is not just on Will Levis. This is an issue with the whole team. Now, I asked, and you can leave a comment, where do you go from here? Not just quarterback position, but where would you go in the draft? Currently, we're 6. Jacksonville, no shout out to them. They end up losing to the Jets, which means we don't gain any ground on anybody unless the Patriots end up winning today, but I don't see that happening. So this game in a nutshell, shout out to Chigakonkwo. He's my MVP. He played pretty well. But this game was a total disaster from both teams. I mean, there were a lot of turnovers, a lot of penalties, those kind of things. Over, 200 penalty yards, over 10 turnovers. And again, you just knew if you gave Burrow time, the Titans can't tackle to save their life. They are not innocent on this either. There are many times they were in the backfield. They can't bring it back. They can't bring quarterbacks down. Speaking of our sponsors, check out BetUS. Today, believe it or not, use that promo code YouTube150 to get you 150% bonus on your first deposit and 125% bonus on deposits 2 and 3. But today we looked at 3 Titans and we monitored their success throughout the game. And it was, and another, as all 3 didn't hit. Pollard had 45 rushing yards. Will Levis got benched. He had 80-some passing yards. And Calvin Ridley had 40 receiving yards. So all three of them would have failed. But if you took the under on all three, shout out to you because you won. And BetUS is quick with turnarounds and getting you the money that you deserve. So shout out again to BetUS. Use that promo code YouTube150. So again, where do you go from here? I think ultimately that's the question. Did I expect to beat the Bengals? Did you expect to beat the Bengals? I think most of us would say no. Are the Bengals a playoff team? I'm going to go ahead and say no. They're 6-8. They didn't look great either today. They made a lot of mistakes. Unfortunately, they're just a better team than we are, and we weren't able to get away with the mistakes. But after this game, riding home from the stadium, doing what you guys do throughout the week, this is the game where this whole narrative of, yeah, we should go with Will Levis because we don't have any other option versus no, we should be done with him and be over him. You just can't have that argument anymore. This was the game that buried him. So it's done. It's over with. He's benched officially. I would imagine he's benched for the rest of the season. And here's the thing, too. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Why I go Sam Darnold, and I'm not even a Sam Darnold fan, but I'm saying this is what Rand's going to do. Rand's going to bring Sam Darnold in because he's going to want to save his job. Okay? Will Levis is not going to save Rand's job. Would you at least agree with me on that one? He's not. So Mason Rudolph, I think you can work with him and he can be serviceable, but he shows his flaws. So Sam Darnold's a guy that's having an up year in Minnesota, and Minnesota is at that point where they're probably going to invest in the younger J.J. McCarthy. They already gave him the draft pick, so I would assume they're going to roll with him almost like a Kansas City thing with Mahomes and Alex Smith. But the reason why I think Rand goes Darnold, and some of you are, well, don't pay him the money. It's a lot of money, and Darnold's going to, it doesn't matter. Rand wants to be GM. GMs don't always get another opportunity down the road. If Rand keeps on with Will Levis, Rand will be fired before the new stadium opens. And Callahan might be fired well before that as well. But you're getting at the point now where the Titans are going to have to be smart. The Will Levis experiment is over. It's done. The only reason you keep him on the team next year is maybe a third team or a backup quarterback role. But heaven forbid even having him out on the field. Again, he can't read a defense. He's very slow at it. He's a one-read guy. And when that guy's not open right away, push come to shove, it's just a disaster. It's another pick six in this game as well to make matters worse. But again, if I had to give MVPs, I would give Okonkwo one. That guy played his butt off. He was really, really good. And he deserves a lot of respect because, despite who the quarterback is, he played pretty well. So that intrigues me a little bit. But offensive line, overall they did okay. They faced a tough front. Hendrickson is pretty good as a pass rusher. They've not had a lot of success this year in Cincinnati with their defense. We know they've been pretty bad in the 20s in most of their stat categories. But I thought the offensive line did what they needed to do. Gifford played well early on. Then he got hurt. Then they had to bring in Williams, the rookie from Miami. But, Kenneth Murray Jr., I don't think he's the long-term answer at middle line. They got a lot of holes. I think we would agree to that. They got a lot of holes. Uzier, they did okay on Chase for the most part. Higgins got loose. Those guys had over 150 yards between the two. But this game, won and lost, doesn't really matter at this point. The reason is the offense is just terrifying bad. Like, really bad. And they did put up some points. They let's not kid her. They were up 14-7. They had a chance to go up 17-7. And then it come all downhill. A lot of penalties galore in this game, a lot of turnovers. It was a tough one to watch, and it lasted a long, long time. But at the end of the day, the Titans lost. They probably lost their idea of bringing Will Levis back to be your starting quarterback for 2025. So leave a comment. Where are you at? Who are you drafting? Because that's where we're at now. Who are you drafting with 3 games left in the top 10? Right now, we're currently at 6, and I don't think that's going to change going into week 16. You taking a right tackle, you taking a tackle of any kind, you doing wide receiver, doing edge, you doing quarterback. Let me know in the comments. And by the way, Will Levis, since this was probably his last game as a Titans starting quarterback, unless there's injury, what's your best highlight of Will Levis being a Titan? I'll go ahead and give you mine. It was the comeback win against the Miami Dolphins. Again, shout out to our sponsors of today's video, BetUS, promo code YouTube150 for 150% on your first deposit. Till next time, take care. Don't forget to tighten up.